This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So usually I record the video for the afternoon on Mondays after the game as well. But given how disappointed I was in the Browns' performance and how disappointed I've been in the Cleveland Browns' performance this first quarter of the season, I wanted to give myself a full night's sleep to kind of reset before I continue to talk about the Browns, because honestly, this video wouldn't have been much more different than the video I dropped this morning if I wouldn't have done that, because I would have still just been talking about the disappointment. So while I am disappointed with this team, while I am frustrated with the performance of this team, I want to talk about what's actually fixable with this team and what they can get playing at a better level, because I have to believe that this is not even close to the best football that the Cleveland Browns will play. I understand that people are looking at the schedule and they're saying to themselves, hey, if the Browns play like they did last week against all of those teams that they have on the schedule, they're going to go 0-4 how many games are left on the schedule. And I would agree, if the Browns played at this level versus every team that they play against on the schedule going forward, they're not going to win very many games. But I don't think they're going to continue to play at this low of a level. I think this is so far beneath them that they have to play at a higher level. And we're going to talk about what's going to be necessary for them to play at a higher level. Let's talk about the defense first, because I see a lot of folks coming up with complex answers for why the defense has looked like this the last couple of weeks especially. And I don't think it's complex why the defense looks like this. I don't think the solution is that complex. It's a really simple thing that's going wrong with the Cleveland Browns defense, and it's tackling. This is one of the worst tackling defenses in the NFL. Now, last year, because again, the Browns are very aggressive, they weren't one of the greatest tackling defenses in the NFL. Usually, to be a sure tackling team, you got to play pretty conservatively. So you're allowing receptions to be completed because you're going to tackle and rally to the ball. Think about how the Colts played a couple of years ago, like that soft zone, sit over top, tackle. That's going to create one of the best tackling teams and one of the lowest missed tackle percentages in the NFL. When you're aggressive, you're going to be at best, if you're a really good defense, in the middle of the league in missed tackles. So I'm not judging them 1-32, but I do want the Browns to be somewhere in the middle. They're way, way at the bottom this year with missed tackles. They are awful at tackling this year. And it's interesting how teams are choosing to take advantage of the Cleveland Browns. What teams are doing against the Browns right now are just throwing it short and putting the burden on the Browns secondary to tackle. And right now the Browns secondary is not answering the call. All three of the Browns starting corners, not great tacklers to begin with. Denzel Ward, probably the best tackler out of all of them. Martin Emerson, I think to myself, is having probably the most disappointing start to the season out of any of these corners. Not only has he gotten hit a little bit harder than you would want him to get hit when it comes to coverage, right? He's not doing as great as a job in coverage as he once did, but also he's not tackling well, right? We always kind of prided Martin Emerson, his physical ability and his ability to tackle. It's just not there right now for the Cleveland Browns, and I think that's a huge problem because teams are just either running right at Zadarius Smith, and they're getting huge gashes there. They're running right at the interior of this this defensive line, and they're getting huge gashes there. And they can trust that they're going to get a high missed tackle percentage from basically anybody that they go at. Either they're running right at JOK when they run the ball to get a missed tackle, or they're running to the right side to get some corners or some safeties on the box. Either way, missed tackles, it's the biggest problem for this team. And I noted this during the live stream, and when I'm doing my preliminary look over the all 22, it's something that I saw pop up just by looking at it. Not only are they missing tackles, they're so much more ineffective in their missed tackles. And that might sound silly at first, but what I mean by that is last year when the Browns got a missed tackle, it at least did something to the player that they missed the tackle on, right? It would trip them up, it would slow them down. The last couple of weeks when the Browns missed tackles, these are complete whiffs. So you're not slowing them down. You're not making it easier for somebody to get an angle on them. You're just kind of letting them run free with the extra body on the ground. And you're creating all this space here. Like they keep selling out as defenders too. Like I don't understand why they're doing this. And I have to think the frequency that you're seeing this has to be on coaching, because you're seeing these players on defense and like you can go back and watch the game and count how many times you see a Browns player, instead of just trying to make a normal tackle, launch themselves at the ball carrier. Like they keep trying to do it. They keep hitting the triangle button. Like it doesn't make any sense why they keep doing this, because it's creating a lot of run lanes because you're missing a lot of those attempts. I don't understand that. A strength of last year's defense was, they did launch to the ball a lot. Yeah, sometimes they did leave their feet to make a tackle. The Browns weren't always going to make the fundamental tackle last year, but they were either hitting on those at a higher rate or they were able to trip up and slow down guys, even if they didn't make those tackles. That's just not happening right now. They're completely whiffing on these tackles. The defense seems like they're a touch slower than they were last year, which I can't even begin to understand why that would be the case. Everybody is within the range where you wouldn't expect a speed decline from them, but missed tackles, really the biggest thing here. When they're tackling well, all this other crap that we talk about with the Browns defense doesn't really matter as much, right? We're not really, like when they're tackling well, we don't really care if they're disguising their defenses. If they're tackling well, we don't really care which specific zone coverage they're in. If they're tackling well, we don't care that sometimes the zone defender is not a zone defender, a flat defender is not right there. They're not playing a lot of Tampa 2, all that stuff that drives me crazy during the game. It doesn't really matter as much when they tackle well. But since they're not tackling well, all that other stuff is starting to matter, and it's making it feel a lot worse than it is. This defense had an interesting game last week. As frustrating as it was that they gave up those 2 early scoring drives to Las Vegas and pretty much blew the Browns' 10-point lead by the end of the first half, the Browns did make the biggest play in this game, which was a fumble recovery for a touchdown. They also did get the stops that they needed at the end of this game for the Browns offense to be able to take over. Unfortunately, you get a bunch of mistakes from either wide receivers or the offensive line that do not allow you to capitalize on that opportunity. But it's complementary football, right? I think that the lack of complementary football has made us feel like this defense is worse than it actually is. It's not great. It's not what it was last year, but it's still a good unit. They just got to tackle better. They start tackling better. They start getting to the ball a little bit faster. If they start playing like that again, then they're going to be a really, really good defense again. But this is really the issue with them, the missed tackle stuff. And I think that is fixable for this team. Let's go offensively. Amari Cooper, he's struggling. There's no doubt in my mind he's struggling. He has 3 games, according to PFF, where he has a drop grade under 50. Last year, he had 6 games where he had a drop grade under 50. Again, 6 games in 17. We're talking about 3 games in 4 weeks where he has this high drop grade. You had hoped that after that New York Giants game, things were going to kind of get back to normal with Amari Cooper. And for the most part, they did. But when he did not catch the ball, it just happened to be a huge play for this team. I mean, a play that probably cost them the game in hindsight, because Deshaun threw a laser right to his chest. He was open. It was on time, and it pops off Amari Cooper's chest and pops right into a safety's hands. And look, is it unfortunate that that ball bounced that way? And is that usually how the football will bounce in a situation like that? Yeah, that's not usually how that would go down. That was really a bad break by Amari Cooper on that. But still, you shouldn't be in that you shouldn't have that opportunity come up, because that's a real catchable ball for you. Now, for the rest of the game, I thought Amari Cooper was fine, right? Like, I don't think he really was bad for the rest of the game. But that one mistake, that one drop really loomed heavily over this Cleveland Browns team. Let's talk about the offensive line, specifically DeJuan Jones. And I want to address something that came up in yesterday's video. Well, not yesterday's video, this morning's video, that I feel like has been taken a little bit out of context, where people are like, oh, Quincy just said the offensive line is fine. I'm talking about the offensive line, like, based on what you could really expect out of them, given how much injury that they're dealing with on the line right now. If you want to make the argument that the Browns offensive line is not a good offensive line right now, nobody's standing in your way. Everybody agrees with you on that. But if we're considering the fact that they don't have their left tackle, the right tackle is having issues as well, and that's not their starting right tackle in DeJuan Jones, even though it's a little bit less of a backup situation there. At right guard, you have a backup and a rookie in with Zach Zinter, and you had your center flipping in and out all game, from Ethan Posick to Nick Harris. Given those circumstances against the Raiders, who aren't a good pass rush outside of Max Crosby, I thought the team had some moments in there where they held up well. It doesn't mean I think the offensive line is playing like at a top 10 level or anything like that. Like some people made it out that I said. Like, I still think the offensive line is a disappointment and they're not good. And I said that in that video. But a lot of people were focusing on, I guess, something I said early in the video where I was like, hey, they weren't as bad. That's what I meant. They weren't as bad given what the situation is for the offensive line, which is awful, right? They're missing a bunch of starters. They've had starters in and out, and it's something that's starting to hurt them, right? The whole snap debacle at the end of the game was because we had a backup center in. But anyways, let me talk about DeJuan Jones, because I think DeJuan Jones is experiencing some issues, and I think there's a clear reason why he's experiencing these issues, and it has to do with all the injuries on the offensive line. Because I thought DeJuan had an awful first half to this game, and he has had an awful 6 quarters leading up to this game. I thought his last 2 quarters, he was much better. Like, after the whole thing with him getting yelled at by everybody on the sideline, Deshaun Watson yelled at him. I think he did start to play a little bit better after that, so that's good there. But it's been concerning with DeJuan. He just seems like he's overwhelmed at the right tackle position. And this is one of the things I wanted to hit on in the offseason and talk about, because a lot of people were super eager, because DeJuan Jones had a good season his first year, to play him at left tackle just so they can get rid of Jed Wills. And I was always against that, and I was always vocally against that, because DeJuan Jones was still a very young player. And what you don't want to do with a young player when you're developing them is overwhelm them. And moving DeJuan Jones to the left side would have been something that would have been an obvious source of overwhelming. So even without doing that, he looks overwhelmed, right? He's struggling with stunts and twists, and it doesn't make it easier now that he has a rookie next to him, right? He went from having Wyatt Teller, who is a veteran, next to him, who's going to help him keep his head on the swivel. And if he doesn't, Wyatt really good at keeping his head on the swivel. Now you lose that and you get Zach Zinter. And I'm not saying Zach Zinter is bad or anything. It's just he's a rookie. And there's going to be limitations that rookies have when dealing with these flourishes that NFL defenses like to throw at young players especially. That's just going to naturally create a struggle for him. So now he has to compensate for the right guard being inexperienced when he's inexperienced himself. And what I see is a very overwhelmed tackle. He's just asked to do more right now than where he should be. And he really needs some help there at the right side. And unfortunately, he's not going to get much help on the right side because the Browns have a backup left tackle in who needs more help, quite frankly, than DeJuan Jones does. So that's what I think is going on with DeJuan. I just think he's overwhelmed. We're asking way too much out of a young player to kind of hold things down for the entire right side of the offensive line. At times, I mean, we had Nick Harris in there as well. So we're talking about like 3 inexperienced guys on one side. You're just going to have issues adjusting the stunts and twists, especially when you can't roll help over that way because you have to worry about the left side of this offensive line as well. The injuries are really taking its toll on this offensive line. Like, there's no unit that needs to get healthier faster than the Cleveland Browns offensive line. So these are 3 big problems the Browns have had this year that I think will be fixed over time, right? The defense, I think they're going to tackle better. Like, they've had a horrible 2 weeks of tackling. I think that'll shore itself up as soon as next week, hopefully, right? Because if you're not tackling well against the Commanders as well as they play after the catch, you're going to be in for a horrible day there. So hopefully they tackle well. Amari Cooper, yes, it's a disappointing start to the season, but statistically, if you look at it, it's not super unusual what's happening with him. He does have games like this, and he did have games like this last year. I think it's more visible because it's happening at the start of the season, but he's not on he has not had an amount of bad games or had issues in a way that is unusual for him to have during the year. It's just that this is happening for him at the beginning of the season, which is a bit unusual, but I think it will correct itself as the year goes on. I don't think Amari Cooper physically looks like he has fallen off as much as some people might say he has. I think this is just an issue of maybe he's frustrated with the offense. This offense has changed. They're not going downfield as much as they were last year or even in 2022. We talked about it. Deshaun's throwing the ball between 10 or behind the line of scrimmage 65% of the time now. So I think he's frustrated with that. He's frustrated with the offense. He's frustrated with himself, and those drops are being created because of that. But I trust Amari Cooper to be a professional and figure this out, and this won't go on the whole season. DeJuan Jones, I think it's just simple. He's overwhelmed right now. He really, like, nobody needs Jed Wills and Jack Conklin to get back healthy more than DeJuan Jones. And nobody needs Wyatt Teller to come back more than DeJuan Jones. Like, he's just being asked to do way too much, and it's starting to become a huge problem for him. So I think the Browns really need to get healthy there, because even if Jack Conklin comes back and you don't start him over DeJuan, you can have Jack Conklin as somebody that you can put as an eligible tackle on DeJuan's side for some plays, or even rotate in and out with DeJuan to take that burden off of him, because right now, him being the most experienced player on the right side of the offensive line, it's a problem, right? It's not something that he should be expected to handle, and it's not something that he's handling well. And I think, again, when you get healthier, once you get Jed back, once you get other people back, I think you'll be able to kind of mitigate these issues that you're going through with DeJuan. I think we all forget, because DeJuan Jones is giant and he played well last year. He's still a development, right? He's still in development. And I think we're putting too much responsibility on a player who is still developing, and that's rolling into its own issues there. So these are 3 big problems the Browns have going on that I think they'll fix with time. And look, they're playing awful football right now. I think they're playing some of the worst football in the NFL. The question is this how they're going to play for the whole season, or are they going to start to turn around and play significantly better football that they're more capable, that they're absolutely capable of playing? Like, they're capable of playing way better than they are right now. So I think they'll play better. The question is, did they dig themselves? Look, I have no doubt that this team is going to play much better football in the coming weeks than they have the last 4 weeks. The question is, did they dig themselves too deep of a hole in this first 4 weeks for it to matter that they're going to play better football? Because even if you do play better football against a tougher part of your schedule, it's going to be difficult to get those wins out. So this is going to be something that we're going to come back to over the course of the year. But I think that a lot of these issues that they have are fixable. And then they're much, much more capable of playing better football than what they've appeared to be the first few weeks of the season. That's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Having a better night. Peace.